today, we're gonna take a little test just to see how smart everybody is. And don't worry, I have faith that you guys are smart. Whoa. There we go. So I'll repeat that just so you make sure you hear me. Today, to start off, we're going to take a test. And I want you guys to know how smart you are, all right? We're going to talk about what you're afraid of today for the sermon, John chapter 6. So we're going to start off with a list of phobias, of fears that people have, okay? So it's a good one to start out with. Testophobia. What do you think that one is? Testophobia.
Afraid to take tests?
Fear of taking tests. How many of you guys had that one in high school? All right.
Me with Thursday?
So, what about theophobia? Any guesses?
Wait, say that again.
It's a fear of God. All right? Or religion. Let's find it. Oh, yeah. Scolionophobia is the fear of school. Anybody? Oh, most of the kids are downstairs. Oh. There's going to be a few hands go up on this one. I want to make sure I get it right. So, cherophobia. It's the fear of your in-laws. Anybody? You can keep your hands down. Phylacrophobia, the fear of becoming bald. Anybody? We got a few? Okay, all right, fair enough. Oh, this one hurts. Plutophobia, the fear of becoming wealthy. Yeah, that's a big fear I have. I don't know what I'm going to do with all my loads of cash. Paganophobia, fear of beards. You're probably in the wrong church if you have that one. Oh, here's one I think a lot of churches have. Neophobia, fear of anything new. Right? Sometimes we like things to stay the way they've always been. Aphalophobia, it's a fear of the belly button. Alright? These are legitimate fears people have. Let's see, do I have any other good ones? Chimabophobia is a fear of waves. So if you're ever out in the ocean and you're wondering what a wave is going to do. Alright, so there's a list of well over 300 phobias that people have. I suppose on this side, if you don't actually struggle with any of those, it's a bit funny to know that people struggle with being afraid of belly buttons. And yet if you legitimately find yourself in that sort of fear, it can really ruin your day, can't it? Because let's be honest, we've all got something that we're afraid of. And if you're sitting here saying, Justin, I'm not afraid of anything, you're lying. Because I can tell you, I've worked with people enough. Everybody is afraid of something. For some people, it's a belly button. There's like 8 phobias of being afraid of your mother-in-law. So if you ever wondered if that's a real thing, yeah, there's 8 different versions of being fearful of your mother-in-law. But for some of us, maybe it's a fear of being found out. I don't, man, if people really knew what I was like, they wouldn't like me that much. We're afraid of being found out as a fraud. So we come to church and we sit amongst a bunch of people and we come with our mask on because there's something deep down inside of us that makes us afraid to expose who we really are to those around us. Maybe it's because we've tried to share before and been burned. Hey, I struggle with this, and all of a sudden that becomes the gossip on the prayer chain. Maybe we're afraid of being found out because while we present ourselves as really nice and upstanding people, on the inside we're full of chaos and turmoil, and we just don't have it all together. And for somebody with our stature or leadership position or capabilities, you've got to have it together. Maybe some of us are afraid of the relationships around us. Boy, what happens if this person comes back in life? Boy, what happens if I'm at the grocery store and I get hit by a car? That's a phobia for some of us. We're afraid of going out in public places. When I was a freshman at Tabor, I not only protested, but to the point of yelling and screaming through tears at my dad, told him why I should not have to take a speech course because that would be something I will never use in my entire life. Joke's on me, God says. But I was deathly afraid and terrified of public speaking. I took a test in high school once, high school psychology. 1, you are an extreme introvert. You don't like being around people. That drains energy from you. 5, you are an extreme extrovert. You're always the outgoing party person. I took the test and scored a 0. I broke the parameters of the test because I was so introverted that my teacher called me a blob. So when I get to Tabor, and why do I need to take a public speaking course? It's more than just, I don't want to or I don't like it. It was something that terrified me. I'd wear like 8 shirts so that by the time I finished my 3-minute speech, you couldn't tell how much I was sweating. And I'd sit there with rags and handkerchiefs, and you've got to keep a towel. Finally, I took a bath towel once because I was sweating that much. I was so nervous that for 3 minutes I would have to stand in front of somebody and tell them about Halloween or my favorite vacation or my favorite pet growing up. It was more than just something that made me uncomfortable. It was a fear that I had. And it wasn't until I realized that God was shaping me through those sorts of experiences and calling me to a life as a pastor that I really began to have to address those sorts of fears in my own life. I talked from somebody as a freshman that was crying because I'd have to give 4 speeches in 18 weeks. And Dad, don't you know that's a skill I'll never need to know? So somebody that by the time I was in seminary, I was trying to take as many preaching courses as I could. Not because I'm particularly good at it, but because I really, really enjoy it. But there's something embedded in me that was telling me to be afraid, to be fearful, that I can't go there with God. So I don't think it's any coincidence that as we're going through the 7 miracles in John, that this is one that John chose to include. Remember, if we look at the way the gospel writers are writing their story, Matthew writes to people that are primarily Jewish. He includes a lot of Old Testament backgrounds. He includes a lot of metaphors for the nation of Israel and for God's people. And Matthew is writing to the Jewish synagogue of his day saying, this is why you should believe in Jesus. Luke, on the other side of the spectrum, is writing for Gentile believers, people that are coming to faith in Jesus and have no sort of background of the Jewish history and religion and tradition of the people. And John, I think, is writing the question for us in our day, trying to answer the question which we've looked at every week, who is Jesus? He's given us 7 clues in the miracles that he has chosen to write about. Clues that are going to help us answer the question, who is Jesus? Sign 1, water to wine, he's talking about someone that brings abundance. That in God's kingdom, in God's way of doing things, there's more than just barely enough. There's more than enough for everybody. So invite people into the party. Sign chapter 2. Jesus heals someone by faith. It's this sign, this foreshadowing that when Jesus completes his mission, faith in God, life in God, is done by belief in Jesus. Sign 3. The paralyzed man that is laying by the pool and can't ever get in. Jesus foreshadows that he wants to heal more than just your body, more than just the physical ailments. There's something within your soul that needs to be healed as well, and Jesus came to do that as well. Last week we talked about the boy that had the few small loaves of bread and fish, and with that, Jesus fed a crowd of 5,000 men plus the women and children. And again, not only was there satisfactory amount, but they picked up leftovers. There was abundance. There was more than enough. That when we bring whatever small offering we have to God, he says that's more than enough and I can use that. And if we place ourselves in a couple of places in the story, we can sometimes identify with the disciples. Jesus, how on earth are you planning on doing this? There's clearly not enough to go around, and we doubt. And sometimes we can place ourselves in the story of the crowd. Hey, Jesus, we just want to see some more cool miracles. Come, give me some more blessings so I know how great you are. And yet the position that we probably should identify ourselves with is that little boy who says, look, this is all I've got, but take it and use it. And Jesus says that's enough. So with a few small loaves of bread and a few fish, Jesus feeds an entire crowd. And this week, we're looking at our fears, because that's primarily what this side in the Gospel of John is going to address. So quickly, in case you forgot, here's the act, here's the sign. It's broken up between Jesus feeding the 5,000, which is what we looked at last week, and the explanation of the feeding, which is something we sort of dove into last week as well. And right between the miracle that we looked at last week and the explanation of why it's important, Jesus is the bread of life, comes this short little story. And it serves as a sign primarily to the disciples, because that's the one that Jesus did this sign for. So if you identify yourself as a follower of Jesus, this sign is for you. That's something like the feeding of the 5,000 is for the masses, it's for the people. Look, come to me, I am the bread of life. Come, find your rest in me. And yet this sign is geared towards those that have said, Jesus, I'm not quite entirely sure what it means all the time, but I choose to follow you. So Jesus gathers with his disciples on the lakeside immediately following the feeding and says, go to the other side of the lake. So they gather in a boat and they begin to set off. The disciples leave. It doesn't really tell us what Jesus is doing, but I suppose if I had to guess, well, one of two things is going on. One, he knows what's about to happen and is staying behind just for the fact that he can do this miracle. Second, and I think it's just as likely, just as plausible of an explanation, he's staying behind to connect with God. That was the original intent behind the feeding of the 5,000, was him and the disciples retreating to have a little bit of alone time. So Jesus is probably just saying, look, I was supposed to connect with God on Sunday, the people came, I'll connect with God on Monday now and make sure that's a regular rhythm and part of my life. So Jesus sends his disciples off, and they get about 3.5 miles into their lake journey, and a storm begins to appear. The rowing gets hard, and all of a sudden their progress isn't quite as steady and consistent. Jesus, in the midst of a storm, figures, well, I walked around the lake when I'm God and can walk straight across it. So he begins to walk on the water, meets the disciples in the boat struggling, and says, it is I, don't be afraid. They help him into the boat. Immediately, it reaches the other side of the lake. The crowds can't find Jesus, and so there's this large scavenger hunt looking, hey, where did Jesus go? The people want more of him. But remember, as we looked at last week, they don't really want more of Jesus. They tend to want more of the good things that they think Jesus can provide them. They want the cool kid for president. You know, Jesus, in their eyes, was running for student council, and he's promising soda fountains instead of water fountains. So they're looking for Jesus, not because they want to make that personal connection, but simply because they want more of the blessing they think that they want Jesus to give them. So as we get started and look at the explanation of the sign, I've got a video for you now, just forewarning. We're talking about phobias and fears today. It involves spiders, alright? So if you are afraid of spiders, you have been warned. I don't want to give away the ending, but they're pretty big spiders. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and watch this video as we talk about what it means to have fear and faith in Jesus.
You guys are going to have to eat these African cave-dwelling spiders. Just fight it and chew it. Fight it and chew it. Do it. It's right there. It's right there. Look, forget about it. Grab it. Grab it. Grab it and keep going. It's all in your mind. Grab it. Grab it. Grab it. Grab it. Do it. There you go. Get it. That's it. Get it. Get it.
All right. So let's talk today about what we might base off of that popular TV show, Fear Factor Faith. And there's a moment in that video behind all of the squeamishness of eating a spider almost the size of your face that I think is pivotal for us in understanding what it means to be people of faith in Jesus. And that is the group help that she experienced. At that moment where she is, I don't know if I can do this. The host, Joe Rogan, turns to the crowd and says, "Do you want her to eat it?" And the crowd erupts. And there's something to be said for group encouragement, isn't there? In that moment, when you are debating, I don't know that I can do this anymore, and you get that note in the mail, or you get that encouraging email, or a phone call from a friend that you haven't talked to in a while. There's that moment where somebody comes into your life to push you on and say, I don't know what's going on, but God told me to pray for you, to get in contact with you, to see how things are going. So, how are you? This serves as pivotal moments in our life to encourage us to keep pushing on. Elise and I in seminary several times experienced, you know what, the bills aren't paid and the money's out, and we're not quite sure how this bill is going to be paid, and then you go to check the mail and they're in the mailbox with an envelope and said, hey, God told me to pray for you, so here's $20. Right? Those sort of moments of encouraging faith continue to push us on in the midst of life's difficult circumstances. So what does it mean for us, in the midst of our life, in the midst of whatever it is we're going through, to be people who in the midst of fear continue to walk by faith? I think first, in order to answer that question, we've got to look at what it is the disciples are experiencing. Because for them, for us, it's not a big deal to walk down to Athmore and to go swimming. To go find a lake in the summer while we're camping and go for a quick swim. But for the disciples, for the Jewish world of Jesus, the vast majority of people didn't swim. And water was something to be feared. They're land people. They live in the desert. They live in a place that doesn't hardly get any rain, let alone has deep standing pools of water. People don't learn to swim in that day. You read the Old Testament, you read the Jewish books of faith. The deep water is where sea monsters live. It's used as a sign for the unknown, and even in a few spots, it's described for hell itself. Those deep waters, those mystical waters where we can't tell you what happens at the bottom level of the sea. That's sort of what hell is like. It's dark and it's murky and you don't know what's going on there, but it won't be pleasant. All of the things you need for life won't be there. So most people probably had, if we're looking at phobias, most people in Jesus' day, in the Jewish culture, probably had a phobia of deep water. Or at least a healthy respect for it. It's not something to be toyed with. You don't mess around by going into the deep end. You swim in places where your feet can always touch the bottom. So for Jesus to tell his disciples to row across the lake, at least initially there's always some sort of bit of hesitation or healthy respect for crossing that lake, because it's never a journey that's guaranteed. It's not just like you hop in an ocean cruise liner and make a quick little jaunt around a lake. This is something where you're in a tiny little fishing boat and one big wave could capsize the whole thing. So even if they had done it 100 times before, there was always still that little bit of hesitation. What's going to happen this time? And yet the disciples leave. And in the midst of that storm, which you always dread and pray doesn't happen, they find themselves in it. So imagine as they're rowing harder and trying harder, water continues to come into the boat. You have two jobs on that tiny little fishing vessel. You're either rowing to try and get you out of it, or you're scooping water out to make sure the boat doesn't sink. Those are your two jobs. So the 12 disciples are divided into two groups, and you're either rowing or you're flushing out water because you don't want to die. In perhaps the most fearful and traumatic way of that culture. So again, like we started this time out with, the question, what are you afraid of? It may not be water. You may look at me and say, but I'm a great swimmer, I'm not afraid of water. No, but we're all afraid of something. Some of us are afraid of spiders. And that seeing one in the house is not just a, oh, there's a spider, let me go and kill it. It is a, let me just light the house on fire and burn it down and start over because I dislike spiders that much. Right? Some of us would rather burn our house down than go and kill that spider. Just, I'm done with it. Some of us are afraid of being found out as a fraud. There's something within each of us that keeps us afraid. That part of our human condition has trained us that it is not only acceptable, but to some point accepted, required, that you live your life in fear over that one area. Jesus, in the midst of that storm, walks across the water. We're this sign for the fear, for the unknown, for hell itself. Jesus walks across the water and says, "It is I, don't be afraid." It is the same call that God in the Old Testament gave to Abraham, He gave to Moses at the burning bush, and He gave to His people when they chose to follow Him. Jesus says, "I am." If we read the story of Exodus, when God reveals Himself to Moses, to His people, and Moses says, "Who do I say sent me?" He says, "Tell them I am has sent you." It's precisely the sort of language that Jesus uses. So Jesus, walking across the fearful and the unknown situations in the lives of the disciples, says, "It's okay. God is here. And I am with you always." Jesus not only declares Himself in that moment to be God, but He declares Himself Lord over the fearful and unknown moments of our lives. The disciples rowing across the lake in a storm, fear of capsizing, encounter Jesus who says, "Don't worry, my name is God, and I'm on your side." Now, we've all got storms of life, don't we? Those moments of fear, of abandon, of regret, of fright over the unknown. Boy, what's going to happen tomorrow? Oh, there's that doctor test that's coming up, and I'm not sure what the results are going to be. There's that moment every night when I feel just absolutely alone and I don't know where to turn or what to do. And it is precisely in those moments that Jesus enters into our lives and says, "I am is here. God is here. Don't be afraid." A life with God doesn't eliminate fear or worry. It gives you someone in the midst of fear and worry that you can trust and hold on to. In fact, you might even go so far as to say God gives moments of fear and worry in our life just so He can show how great His power is to work through them. We live in a celebrity culture where if you go to Hollywood and you walk down the sidewalk, the Star Walk of Fame there, it's inevitable that you will encounter someone famous. We sensationalize media and TV characters and movie stars to the point where a lot of us have a desire to meet them. I want a picture with you. And then we sort of do this interesting thing. Once we've met somebody famous, they sort of become our claim to fame, don't they? "Oh man, I was sitting at the gas station and when, Peyton Manning came up and filled up his car next to mine and we chatted for it must have been hours while our gas tanks were filling up, and now Peyton and I are best friends." Right? We sort of have this ability to take this moment encounter and spread it through the rest of our lives. I met Brad Pitt once, and I'm sure he's got me on speed dial. He hasn't called me yet, but he's a busy guy. A lot of us, in reality, do the same sort of thing, or we expect the same sort of thing with Jesus. We encounter Him once. Oh man, that one time Summer camp in 97, that was amazing. And then we sort of walk away and never regularly choose to spend time with him again. And what we do when we experience and plan those moments, we put ourselves in the place of the crowd. And this is right between the feeding of the 5,000 and Jesus urging them, look, don't just come to me for physical bread, come to me for the spiritual bread. There's something in your life that's hurting right now that you can't control, that you are afraid of, that has you down. And in me alone can you find that peace. The crowds wanted just that once in a lifetime, that chance encounter. I want some sort of blessing from God. I'll come to you, Jesus, when I'm good and ready so that you can bless me somehow. But Jesus, in training his disciples, in training his followers, in training the people that say, yes, I choose to follow you, he's teaching them that there's something much more necessary than just a one-time chance encounter with Jesus. Meeting him at Summer Camp 97 is not the answer to your life's problems. Looking for him, turning to him, walking with him, even in the midst of fear, of unknown, of doubt, of worry, of regret. That's where a life with Jesus is formed. That in the midst of whatever, if we took the mic around and said, what are you afraid of? Whatever your answer would be. More than spiders. More than your in-laws. More than having too much money. But the real fear that keeps all of us back and putting on masks and pretending to be somebody that we're not. What is that fear in your life? And the pronouncement that Jesus gives us is, whatever that is, I'm with you. I am on your side. It is I, don't be afraid. That lady in the video, I don't know how afraid of spiders she is in her normal everyday life, but the thought of needing to eat one was rather fearful at the time. That community pushed her on. Those people watching said, you can do it. It's the same sort of call we get from Jesus. And in those moments of fear, of fright, of wonder, of worry, those are precisely the moments that God says, I have prepared for you something great to do through me. This miracle was for the disciples. It was for those that would come and God and say, Jesus, I want to follow you. And his message is that whatever your life is going to face, you're not always going to have control of. But you will always have me. It is I. Don't be afraid. God himself is on your side and in your corner. Let's pray.